When was the crucifixion of Jesus? In the previous video, we examined a minimal facts argument, drawing reasonable conclusions from well-documented sources in order to show that there are three plausible dates of the crucifixion that are consistent with all of the evidence we've considered. Those dates are presented here. They were in AD 27, AD 30, and AD 33. Above each date, I've provided the date as it was reckoned in the Jewish month of Nisan, and below each date, the date as it was reckoned in the Roman month of April. These are Julian dates, not Gregorian. In this video, we're going to examine the first of two independent arguments showing that one of these three dates is a much better fit with the evidence than the other two. I'd like to start out by pointing out an argument that I will not be using. I will not be trying to determine the date of the crucifixion by first making assumptions about the date of Jesus' birth. We have far more chronological information about when Jesus died than we do about when he was born, so I suggest working from his birth to calculate the date of his death would be solving the problem backwards. We would be layering assumption upon assumption. The argument we will use here comes from the single most precise chronological reference in the New Testament. In the opening verses of Luke chapter 3, Luke goes to some length to tell us when and where the ministry of John the Baptist began. He provides not one reference point, not two, but 6 different reference points to tell us when this is, the most helpful of which is he tells us that it was in the 15th year of Tiberius, the emperor of Rome. This is very helpful because we know when Tiberius was emperor, from AD 14 to AD 37. So we should be able to figure out when the start of Tiberius' reign was and count forward to figure out when his 15th year would be. Well, let's start with what we do know. Augustus, Tiberius' predecessor, died in August of AD 14. Some people start the clock of Tiberius' reign then. Tiberius was confirmed by the Roman Senate and given the title of emperor in September of 14. Many people start the clock then. The next Roman calendar year began January 1st, AD 15. Some people start the clock for Tiberius' first year at that point. The best interpretation of the historical sources suggests that his reign was counted from September. However, it turns out that for purposes of our argument here, it will not matter whether we use August, September, or January, because what we ultimately need to know is when was Passover in the 15th year of Tiberius. Whether we count from August of 14, September of 14, or January of 15, Passover in the 15th year of Tiberius will still be in the spring of AD 29. So it should be case closed. There's our answer, right? John the Baptist's ministry began around AD 29. Well, unfortunately, like most things in New Testament studies, there have been a number of competing views put forward in efforts to re-reckon Tiberius' reign. From what I've read, I've seen two principal reasons why people try to re-reckon Tiberius' reign. One is that they've already decided in advance what they want the date of the crucifixion to be, and so they try to force the evidence to fit the conclusion. This is backwards as well. We should deduce the conclusion from the evidence. Second is that people start by making an assumption about when Jesus was born, use Luke's statement in chapter 3 that Jesus was about 30 years of age, and then try to estimate when he died. As we already pointed out, we have a lot more information about when he died than when he was born. We're not going to try to use that argument. Indeed, many have suggested, well, the death of Herod the Great in March of 4 BC, that's a solid data point from history on which we can build our chronology. Unfortunately, no, it is not. There are significant problems with Emil Schur's calculation that Herod died in March of 4 BC. In this video series, we're focusing on the date of the crucifixion. Subsequent to that, we'll do several videos on the date of Jesus' birth. We'll have a full video on the Herodian chronology, and there we'll go into great detail as to why Herod's death in March of 4 BC is not a solid foundation upon which to build our chronology. Be that as it may, how do people re-reckon Tiberius' reign? How do they get his reign pulled forward a few years in order to change the calculated date of Jesus' crucifixion? Far and away the most common method is to cite a passage in Suetonius, a Roman historian, that appears to suggest that during the last few years of Augustus's life, Tiberius was co-regent with Augustus. Now, the passage in Suetonius is vague. Tiberius did hold various positions of great authority during the reign of Augustus. Unfortunately, there is no corroborating source for Suetonius, and whether Suetonius means that Tiberius was simply the second most powerful man in Rome or full-on co-regent with Augustus is a question upon which reasonable people have disagreed. The question then is, was Tiberius co-regent with Augustus, and if so, was his reign reckoned from the co-regency or from after the death of Augustus? There is historical precedent for co-regents reckoning their reigns from the time of their co-regency rather than starting the clock after their predecessor died. Some co-regents do this, some do not. We have two principal sources that can help answer this question. Did Tiberius reckon his reign from a co-regency? Those are Roman historians and coins. Both sources are unanimous. We'll consider each in turn. The ancient Roman historians that reckon Tiberius's reign are unanimous that Tiberius's reign is reckoned from after the death of Augustus. This means whether there was a co-regency or not, Tiberius's reign was not reckoned from a co-regency. Second are the coins. There are a number of single-dated coins from Tiberius's reign. That is, when the coin was minted, it said it's in this year of Tiberius. These are not terribly helpful for figuring out when Tiberius's reign began, because we don't have another calendar referenced on the coin with which we can align a given year of Tiberius. There are those who have tried to use single-dated coins to argue for a co-regency of Tiberius. For example, there is a coin dated to the 16th year of Tiberius that honors Tiberius's mother. She was an extremely powerful woman in Rome. She had a falling out with Tiberius in the later years of her life, and after her death, the Senate sought to give her honors, and Tiberius sought to wipe those honors out. Essentially, he wanted to remove positive memory of his mother. Rough family some of those Caesars had. In any event, the argument goes that because this coin, dated to the 16th year of Tiberius, honors Tiberius's mother, it must have been minted before her death in AD 29. Two problems here. First, the back and forth between the Senate and Tiberius did not happen in an instant. It would have taken some time. Furthermore, the coin in question was not minted in Rome, but in Judea, and it would have taken additional time for word of Tiberius's edicts to get from Rome to Judea. So we cannot assume that the moment of his mother's death, all coins stopped being minted with honorable mention of her. Second problem, if Tiberius's mother did indeed die in late September of AD 29, as some sources suggest, then she was in fact alive during a portion of Tiberius's 16th year, and so a coin dated to Tiberius's 16th year honoring his mother does not favor either hypothesis. It doesn't move the needle either way. We might move the needle by pointing out a coin from the 17th year of Tiberius, also from Judea, that does not have the honorable mention of his mother. This suggests, okay, she has now died. Tiberius has made sure she's taken off the coins. But if Tiberius's reign was reckoned from a co-regency beginning in approximately October of AD 12, Tiberius's mother would have been alive for most or all of his 17th year. So we can't answer the question with precision using these two coins, but they certainly do seem to favor the possibility that Tiberius's reign was not reckoned from a co-regency. Let's go ahead and set aside the single-dated coins because we're not going to get a decisive answer from them. We in fact have two double-dated coins from Tiberius's reign, and they are quite clear. These coins, when minted, show the date in years of Tiberius and in Actian years, that is, years since the Battle of Actium. This is one of the most certainly known events in Roman history. We know when the Battle of Actium occurred. It was in September of 31 BC. These two coins agree with each other. If you compare the Tiberian date and the Actian date, you find that Tiberius's reign is being reckoned from after the death of Augustus. What does this mean? It means 100% of our written sources and 100% of our coins attest that Tiberius's reign, whether he was co-regent or not, was not reckoned from a co-regency. It was reckoned from after the death of Augustus. Some have still sought to maintain the conclusion that we can and should re-reckon Tiberius's reign. We're going to get his 15th year 1 or 2 years earlier. We'll look at two other ways that this is done. First, some will point out that Luke was from Antioch. Perhaps he was writing to someone from Antioch. Perhaps they're using a different calendar. The Syro-Macedonian calendar is a popular choice. There are three problems with this approach. Number one, it's ad hoc. Number two, Luke is writing to an educated Greco-Roman audience and mentioning a Roman official. And number three, it is inconsistent with its own evidence. What do I mean by that? Well, how do we know that Luke was from Antioch? The New Testament never says it. We know this from the Ante-Marcionite prologue to Luke. Okay, what else do we know from the Ante-Marcionite prologue to Luke? It tells us that Luke's gospel was published in Achaia. Some doubt the authenticity of the prologue, so here's the problem. If we grant the authenticity of the prologue, then Luke's gospel is published in Achaia, they're not using the Syro-Macedonian calendar there. If we do not grant the authenticity of the prologue, then there goes our early evidence for claiming that Luke was from Antioch in the first place. The argument is inconsistent with its own source. Finally, some will try to be a little bit more conservative. They won't commit to a specific calendar. They'll just say, maybe Luke was using a different calendar. Maybe he meant to say something different. Well, maybe he meant to say that the emperor of Rome at the time was Godzilla. We could come up with all manner of hypotheticals, but we won't find any support for them in the text. What we do have is a statement in the text that John the Baptist's ministry began in the 15th year of Tiberius, which according to all of our written sources and all of our numismatic sources, the evidence from coins, is an unambiguous reference. Given that Luke has gone to great trouble to tell us when and where this happens, he wants his audience to know the setting. Remember, he didn't just provide one reference, not two. He gave us 6 references to tell us when this is and who's in power. If he's using some obscure calendar, why doesn't he tell his audience that he is doing so? To not do so would defeat the purpose of having been so specific in the first place. Given the author's manifest, meticulous attention to detail in many places, the reasonable conclusion to be drawn from the text is that when Luke says the 15th year of Tiberius, he means the 15th year of Tiberius. Once we conclude that we should not try to re-reckon Tiberius's reign, it's fairly straightforward to use the reference, the 15th year of Tiberius, to determine when the crucifixion of Jesus occurred. John the Baptist's ministry began in the 15th year of Tiberius. Jesus' ministry began after that of John, and the Gospels record at least 3 Passovers in Jesus' ministry. There might be 4, but there are at least 3. That means that the earliest possible date of the first Passover in Jesus' ministry is in the spring of AD 29. Could be later, can be earlier. That means earliest possible date for the second Passover is the spring of 30, and earliest possible date for the third Passover, spring of AD 31. That means his death could have been later than 31, but could not have been earlier than 31. In the previous video, we showed we had 3 dates to work with, 27, 30, and 33. We've just ruled out 2 of them, leaving only AD 33 consistent with the evidence. Based on this information, we can reasonably conclude that the crucifixion occurred on April 3rd, AD 33. In the next video, we will look at an independent argument. It doesn't matter how we interpret Luke's statement about the reign of Tiberius, and we will find that that argument comes to the same conclusion. The crucifixion occurred in AD 33.